So here we're going to be working with the 9 head counts, but first you need to get your balance line, just as we have here. So at the balance line, each of the head counts will be an inch interval. So that's our 0 to 1, which is 1 inch, so 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, until when we get to the 9 inches. So we have 0 to 1 interval like that, so until when we get to the 9 inches as the 9 head counts. So this is just for the beginner stage. So each of the head size, we're going to be getting the body proportions. 0 to 1 is where the head falls on. At 1.5 is where the shoulder falls on. At 3 is where the waist falls on. At 4 is where the hip falls on. Then at 4.25 we have the crotch or the groin. Okay, so at 6 is where the knee falls on. Then at 7 is where the calf falls on. Then at 9 is where we have the ankle. So at 2 is where the apex falls on, which is the nipple points. All right, so this is the breakdown or the body proportion. Now we have the head, which slots in at 0 to 1, and our head size is definitely always an oval shape. So we'll move on to the shoulder, which we get the width at about 4 centimeter width allowance. So if you realize, we used the length measurement as the inches, then the width measurement now, which is going to be like the get measurement, we'll be working with centimeters. So the width is going to be at 4 centimeters, 2 centimeter on either side from the balance line. So that is for the shoulder. Then at the waist, in order for us to have an hourglass figure, we use at about 2.5 centimeter width, so which is at about 1.25 on either sides from the balance line. So that is connecting now the shoulder to the waist. Then for the hip measurement will be the same thing as the shoulder measurement, because we are trying to portray an hourglass figure. Then at the groin, we have at about 0.5 centimeter, all right, at the groin from the balance line, in order for us to connect back to the hip as to get the pant lines. So from the knee, we come out by 1 centimeter from the balance line, then we connect it back to the hip point, which is at 4. All right, so we're trying to get that hourglass figure, so the shape is going to be looking like a trapezium shape. Then we connect all the way back to 7, which is at the calf, also that same trapezium shape, but you don't allow it to be as much as wide as the hip. All right, so at the ankle, we come out by 0.5 centimeter on either side, then we connect it back to that knee point we had initially. So now we are connecting what the groin at the crotch all the way to have the separated legs. So we connect it all the way back, as you can see, to the ankle from the knee. So most of the lines we're going to be working with is a slight curve. All right, we work most especially with slight curves all the way. So we are going to be getting the feet, and the feet, you are just going to be having like an A kind of shape, making sure that at the toe is more longer than every other part of the feet. All right, so now moving on to get the bust shape. In order for it not to look flat, so we always have like a bust curve, but this bust curve is always a little bit below the apex point. All right, so I'm going to be connecting the neck all the way down to the shoulder with a slight curve back to the shoulder point, just as you can see. Then we move on to have 1 centimeter from the waist point in order for us to get the ankle. So your elbow, it falls at the waist point, connecting back to at the point 2 above the breast form. Then we connect it back to the shoulder point in order for us to have the width. So at this point here, 3 to 4, we get the midpoint of that 3 to 4, which is going to be like the mid calf of the hand. Then at the wrist falls at the groin. So now we connect it all the way to have the fullness of the hand. Then we get our fingers into that point from the wrist. So now the fingers always stops in between the 0.4 and the 0.5. So midway between the 0.4 and the 0.5. That is how we get the fingers in place.